Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third episode of Crunch Time with Kruck. As always, I'm Kruck. Right here is Mad Max, Max Williams. And do we have a show for you today, Max? Today, we're going to be talking about Trevor Lawrence, a little bit of baseball, a little bit more baseball, and then some more college action. So without more further ado, let's get it underway. First topic up today, Trevor Lawrence. He had quite a good pro day at Clemson, keeping things rolling. Out of college, he had just over 10,000 passing yards, 90 touchdowns, 17 interceptions.
Wow.
He had a 67% completion rate, and his QB passer rating was 164.3. He also won a national championship versus Alabama. The score was 44-16. That was his freshman year. His sophomore year, he ended up losing to LSU. Everybody remembers Joe Burrow's famous cigar-smoking scenes. And he's only got 2 losses in college. One was in the national championship his second year, and the other one was in the semifinals against Ohio State. What do you got, Max?
Kruck, Trevor Lawrence, to me, is one of the best college football players right now in the game. And this is why I say that. When you look at his stats right now, last season he had 3,153 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. That's pretty good for his junior year developing in this way. I think a big key for Lawrence heading into the draft is how his mobility and how he's going to be as a player in the draft. Because right now he's trying to come off a shoulder surgery right now, left shoulder surgery. It takes about 5 to 6 months to recover. So we're going to see if he's going to be okay. It's going to be right around spring training time, right? Right around that time where he's got to be ready to go for the season. So it's going to be big. I think another thing, too, is he's got to be able to get his legs moving again. I saw some stats when you looked at the Ohio State game he lost. He had negative 8 yards rushing. And if you know Trevor Lawrence, Trevor Lawrence is a running kind of quarterback. He's a run, dual threat kind of quarterback, and that's very huge for him to go in the NFL. So I'm curious to see, first-year coach Urban Meyer, what he's going to do with him, what he's going to do with the whole coaching staff, how is he going to develop into an NFL star in the league.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Max. He had shoulder surgery on his non-throwing arm, so his throwing arm is still good. He had the surgery. From all accounts, it went great. Urban Meyer, the newly appointed head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars, has been next to him every step of the way so far, making sure that his potential number 1 draft pick is not going to do anything to endanger himself or other players for that matter of fact. Urban Meyer has been doing his research very extensively, making sure that Trevor Lawrence is indeed what he wants to see. And, I mean, Urban Meyer, first-year head coach, but everybody knows that he had a great stint at Ohio State.
Yes, he did.
He got in a little bit of political trouble, a little bit of PR nightmare there at the end. But he's still, at the end of the day, he's still a great coach. He's got a great team that he's coming into. The Jaguars, all accounts say they're going to draft Trevor Lawrence. I mean, it'd be a shame not to. They have a great running back, James Robinson, undrafted rookie out of Illinois State University. Their defense could get a little better, but honestly, everybody's defense in the NFL could.
Yeah.
Their O-line needs some work. So what else do they need, Max?
Well, I think a big thing is you talked all about the offensive side. What about the defensive side for the Jaguars? Their defense, they lost Jalen Ramsey. A big key went to the Rams. I think their team as a whole, I want to see how Urban, like I said before, how Urban develops the Jaguars. Because the Jaguars, they're in a tough division. They're a tough division with the Colts, with the Titans, and that's still going to be a lot to come by for them to try to, win that division and possibly make it into the playoffs. So it's going to be interesting how Urban helps the whole team, and how I want to see if his health's still good. That's another big issue I want to know about Urban Meyer. If his health is still okay, as it gave me a couple of heart attacks, Kruk, when I saw him on the OSU sideline. Man, he scared me a couple of times. But no, I hope his health's okay. I hope he's doing well, and I hope his team gets well for the future.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And all we can do now is look forward to spring training. The summer training, and see exactly what Lawrence can do with an NFL caliber team.
Absolutely, Kruk. We're now going to switch it over, Kruck. We're going to talk about spring training here in MLB. Starting up in the week now, Kruck, the MLB will begin the spring training in the usual states of Florida and Arizona. Some of the biggest teams to look out for are the Dodgers, the Padres, the Cardinals, Tampa Bay Rays, and the Yankees. So, Kruck, out of all these teams, do you believe one of these teams could possibly win the World Series? Do you think there's a wild card team to watch out for in this year's MLB season?
Well, I mean, every team's got their own thing to strive for here. When you break it down, I think the Dodgers, they are the favorite to repeat, and I do think that they have the repeat potential. Just re-signed their free agent, Turner, to third base again. Made some huge moves. Got Trevor Bauer on a ridiculously sized contract.
Crazy contract.
3 years and over $100 million. It's going to be crazy to watch. But I do think the Dodgers are favored to repeat, and that's also my opinion as well. But another team to be on the lookout for, the New York Mets. The Mets have the newly added Francisco Lindor, whose switch-hitting batting is almost as good as his defense is. And under new ownership, he's been making a lot of moves, a lot of noise. Almost got Chris Bryant out of Chicago. What do you think about spring training moving forward as well?
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned the Mets, Kruck. I'm looking at right now the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, hear me out on this, Kruck. The Toronto Blue Jays, they just got a big hitter in George Springer. George Springer last season had, or his career for that matter, has 174 home runs and 458 RBIs. That's pretty good stats and things to help him out for the season. And another young star, like later we're going to talk about Tatís Jr. How about Vladimir Guerrero Jr.? That kid, I think he is very special. He's got 24 home runs, 102 RBIs. That is a lot to come by for this team. The Toronto Blue Jays, they got some pitchers still. I think that needs a lot of work. You know, they got Hung-Ju Ryo, used to be a Dodger. He right now has a great ERA. They still need to improve him in the pitching staff if they want to make a big run to possibly beat the Yankees, because right now the Yankees are the top in that division, right? They're the top of that division. They got Garrett Cole. They got Jamison Talon, big-time players. So if the Toronto Blue Jays want to make some noise in the American League East, they gotta get going on the pitching end and get some big bats.
Well, I mean, you're absolutely right. I did my fair share of research as well on the Blue Jays, and they picked up 4 very good players that I think makes them contenders now. George Springer, as you mentioned, the center fielder from the Astros, as well as Marcus Semien, a shortstop from the Oakland A's. His batting may not be the most impressive thing in the world, but he is one of the hardest people to get a ball past. And then the newly formed powerhouse Padres, they let go of their best closing pitcher, in my opinion, Kirby Yates. He's now on the Blue Jays, as well as Steven Matz, a pitcher from the Mets. Don't really know much about him. I can't say if he's that good of a pitcher, but if the Mets don't want him, I don't want to be rude, but the Mets aren't one of those teams that's going to get rid of a good pitcher.
No.
And fans are back allowed. Fans are back in the stadium, which is going to be fun too. They're allowed in the stadium. Low numbers still. It's going to be around 20 to 25%. But as MLB did comment, we're trying to get the game back to normal-ish. And then one of my other favorite teams, you know, you got to love to hate them, the Astros. Are they still the villains? That's the big question coming into spring training. Is Aroldis Chapman trying to give some CTE to Jose Altuve and company? That's something to look forward. Max, your opinion.
So the Astros, it's very interesting about them. I think a lot of them had to do with the scandal they were in, right? The scandal and how the Astros wore. And I think that kind of brought them down a little bit, brought them down to what they usually wore from last season. But I think the Astros, they're always there. They're always competitors. And I think if they can keep it up, they'll be a team to watch, Kruck.
And the Padres, who can forget about them? A absolute powerhouse lineup. The left side of their infield is a grand total of $640 million. One of the most expensive infields in all of baseball, but their rotation is nothing to be shy of either. Starting off with their ace is going to be between Blake Snell and Yu Darvish. Coming in the 3 spot is going to be Joe Musgrove, and 4 is Mark Melancon. Not too good with names. But then the Cardinals as well. Speaking of infielders, Arenado and Goldschmidt, the second best corner infielders to be on a team this year. First best, in my opinion, is still the Oakland A's.
Yep.
With Chapman and Olsen. They're just very great defenders. But with that said, the Cardinals should be doing pretty good this year, and Arenado should see a bump up in his batting average.
Yeah.
Because he used to have to go from batting in mile high to batting in lower levels, so it was harder for his road bat to really be there. But now that his home field is now that his home field's at a level ground as the rest of them, his road numbers should be up as well. And then who can forget about the Angels? Mike Trout and Rendon, absolutely constant players. 2 players in the top 10 of the MLB right now. And they just picked up Jose Quintana, a starting pitcher from the Cubs, as well as Alex Cobb, a starting pitcher from the Orioles. And on to college news. The NCAA is in contention to adding a new rule. How about that, Max?
So the new rule, Kruck, just to clarify with everybody, is the NCAA is trying to do something to have the issue of players not to fake injuries. And I think, to me, that is a big issue, not just for football, but for other sports that are in there, for soccer, for basketball. Because I always think of, when you think of faking injuries, the idea of flopping. And to me, Kruck, the idea of flopping is just ridiculous. I think it's not necessary. I get it. You can have ideas. You might have a real injury. You might have something, but come on. Like, it's crazy, and I'm glad they're finally taking initiative to look at that. You know what I mean? They're taking initiative this way. My sister, she plays soccer right now, and I watch my sister play certain things, and I always watch, like, why are players faking injuries a lot? Why are they doing that kind of stuff? It's just like it's wasting time for the game, and it's making, to me, the game's not fun to watch. And I think that's really important for people to understand, for people to listen about how that's going to affect the overall idea of sports and how we play it and the competitive nature we need to play it at. So I'm glad they're taking this initiative. I hope it works out, and I hope they think about the idea of faking injuries. If you're doing it for a reason, you're really injured, it's important. And I hope you get better and you get treatment. But if you're doing it just to waste time for the game, to help your team out, for strategy, for this way, I mean, come on, there's other ways you can do that. You can call a timeout. You can find certain ways to calm down your team for certain this way, not faking injury. So it's all crazy to me, Kruck. So I hope they fix this rule up, and quickly, as soon as possible.
I mean, you're absolutely right, and it's not even an official rule yet. To be perfectly honest with it, the AFCA, the American Football Coaches Committee, has asked the NCAA to acknowledge and then possibly vote on this rule later in March. And the rule is trying to prevent the clock from stopping when a defensive player fakes an injury late in games. And you ask, why would a defensive player fake an injury? They have to come out for a play. Well, when your team needs a timeout or when your team needs to stop the momentum of the offense, you fake an injury and you're out for a play, but the rest of your team gets a little extra break. The offense has to stop its rhythm and has to try to pick it back up, and it ruins the game flow, and it's honestly less entertaining when you have to stop the game all the time, because I know personally, I'm not a fan of commercials outside of the Super Bowl. I could care less what the commercials are for yada yada and whatever game I'm watching, but I do have a quote from Todd Berry, an executive director of the AFCA. He says, rules need to have teeth, and this rule has no teeth, which means there's no impact. I mean, it's well put, short and simple. He did a great job showing that the rule that's currently in play is not being enforced because there's easy ways around it, and it has to change. If you want there to be change, you got to change it.
100% agree with that, Kruck. And I agree with one point you mentioned, the game flow of the game. You see what I'm saying? That's a big part of how things happen. I think when injuries happen, I'm like you, I don't like watching commercials, except, that at least they're entertaining like this way. I would want to watch something that is entertaining from start to finish. And by having injuries any time, that obviously stops the game for a period of time. And people, it makes people not want to watch it because you're watching too many injuries. So that's a big key of mine is I hope they change it. I hope they can do something with it, and not just for the game of football and NCAA, but for other sports as well. You know what I mean? For soccer, for basketball, for those other sports, because it's important to understand that thing is just not necessary in all levels.
And the NCAA Rules Committee will vote on this in March, and they will also discuss it prior to whether or not they're going to vote on it. Moving forward, we have something not really a news and stat type thing that we have, but it's something that we really wanted to touch on. Max, take it away.
So, Kruck, after the Cavaliers-Warriors game, Warriors forward Draymond Green talked to the media after a post-game interview and talked about the NBA's treatment of their players and about the idea of double standards for people in this way. This rant came to attention after Cavaliers center Andre Drummond was sitting on the sidelines, and then he had to come back out because he was dressed in street clothes. And this has to do with possibility of maybe the Cavs trading him for an option of Jarrett Allen and a situation like this. So hearing all this, Kruck, I want to know your opinion about this. Do you think this is good to happen for the NBA, and do you think the NBA should take a stance for this?
I think that Draymond Green put it the best way he knew possible, that it is a difference between players and organizations. When players play, they have to try. They have to play. Otherwise, their reputation gets tarnished. If players don't shut up and play, as he put it, players get in trouble. Some of the best players to ever play the game hated the media. Michael Jordan, after one Sports Illustrated cover of him missing a baseball by more than 6 inches, never once talked to the media again.
Wow.
Because the media is slow to your successes, but they are quick as cats to your failures. And Draymond Green was not happy with this. He says that organizations have it easier than players. Organizations, if they want to trade you, they'll trade you. They'll talk about it publicly. If a player wants to leave and talks about it publicly, he's ostracized and he's ashamed. And I think that that's something that should not be okay to do in the NBA. I think the NBA, just like the NFL, just like the MLB, if players want to leave, players are going to say that they want to leave, and they should not be
Absolutely.
They should not be harmed for saying that. That's what they want to do. They're the ones producing. They should be the ones to decide where they go.
Absolutely. It's a big key of letting the players have their voice, have a voice for themselves. You know what I mean, Kruck? Having a voice for themselves is a big thing. Whether you're in anything, any job or situation, you want to have your own voice to express your opinion about certain issues and not let somebody like an organization try to drag you down. I think the NBA's got to understand that. They got to let their players try to get more involved, because if they do that, I think it's going to make the league better, right? It's going to make the league better, especially when players want to play. I know, yes, there's trade rumors all the time, right? People are getting traded. They don't know what's going on. But players, I feel like in their minds, they really want to play. They want to play and help their teams out and make their team better in any shape, way, or possible. You see what I'm saying? It's just, if they can, you know what I mean, they can figure something out with that, it will be huge, not just for the NBA, but again, like you said, NFL, MLB, for all those sports, to understand that all players have a voice for something.
I mean, you're absolutely right. And to quote Draymond Green directly from that interview, players are castrated for seeking trades. In the last big trade that we saw, James Harden ended up going to the Nets to join Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and company. And a lot of people say that he dogged his last couple days in Houston. He wasn't trying his hardest. And when you're tired of a situation and you've been there and you're pretty much the whole team as Harden was to the Rockets, it gets frustrating.
Yep.
He voiced his opinion that he wanted out. And when he finally got out, he's been playing like a brand new man. He's been getting huge numbers of assists. His shooting is still there, but he just seems happier on the court. And I don't understand why organizations have to be in control all the time.
Yeah.
Like, if a player wants out,
Makes no sense.
let the player leave, because like James Harden did, they're just going to dog it and they're not going to do as good as they can.
Kruck, I 100% agree with you. It makes a lot of sense, and I hope they can change that rule up in the future. Well, Kruck, we're going to transition over to talk about Carson Wentz. Over the week, he got traded to the Indianapolis Colts and for a third round and a conditional 2022 second-round pick. So, Kruck, interested, what do you think this trade means for the Colts and for the Eagles in a sense?
Well, I mean, there's always going to be winners and losers when it comes to this trade. The winners are the Indianapolis Colts.
Yep.
They definitely won the trade. They got Carson Wentz. Phillip Rivers had a good year with Indy, just wasn't a good fit. But Carson Wentz is coming in. He got benched. Jalen Hurts started for the Eagles in the back half of the season, so he was benched. He knows what that feels like. I think he's going to come out and he's going to play to his best ability. He's going to try everything he can to not have to ride the bench again. And the Eagles, as mentioned, they get a third-round pick this year and a conditional second-round pick next year. That conditional pick pretty much states if Carson Wentz plays over 75% of the snaps this year, then that second-round pick turns into a first-round pick, which could be pretty good for the Eagles. The Eagles do have Jalen Hurts at starting quarterback. How do you think the Eagles are going to be with him?
I don't know, Kruck. I don't know if I believe in Jalen Hurts right away. You know what I mean? I get it. Jalen Hurts just came back from Oklahoma. He's still learning the system, coming back and doing this way. But I think the Eagles, they need to get some more weapons. You feel like, you know what I mean? I feel like with Carson Wentz was there, he didn't have the weapons that he usually has, right? He doesn't have the people that he wanted and the experience this way that he had. I think that was a main failure for why he wasn't successful in Philadelphia for those years. I mean, when he was I think the main key of this trade is the reuniting with Frank Reich. I think with reuniting him with Frank Reich, and he was really the only one that really believed in him, Kruk. Can't you believe that? One person really that only believed in him is because that was the year of his Super Bowl year. That was the year he had those 33 touchdowns and threw for 3,296 yards. I mean, that's incredible, Kruk. And now look at this year. If we look at the stats from last season, he had 16 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. Almost reminds you of Jameis Winston numbers that he had. Like very similar 30 touchdowns, 30 interceptions he had as well. So I think the big key of this, like I said before, is Frank Reich and Carson Wentz reuniting back in Indianapolis. And the weapons now he's going to be exposed to. Not with like what Jalen Hurts is going to be exposed to now in the near future. He's going to have Jonathan Taylor. He's going to have Michael Pittman. He's going to have T.Y. Hilton there at the organization. I think that is going to be a big key for him if he wants to rebuild his career and rebuild the organization of the Colts to be a playoff team.
I mean, you're absolutely right. We talked about the Colts the last two episodes and possible trade rumors, always looking for a quarterback and possibly looking for J.J. Watt, who's still on the table for the most part. But you're absolutely right. The Colts are missing just that one piece to a, correct me if I'm wrong, but Super Bowl caliber team.
Yeah.
They have a great offense. Their defense is top 10 in the league. Their running back is awesome. They just need a quarterback. Take that leadership role and move them to the next level. Is Carson Wentz the guy to do it? I personally don't believe he is, but he could be. Carson Wentz does have the stats to back it up in his first half of his career. Later on in his career, he hit a slump, but most quarterbacks do hit a slump. Tom Brady hit a slump, and, well, he's still the GOAT.
Yeah, I mean, any quarterback's going to be in a slump, right? Any quarterback's going to have their off years. It's just natural. Anyone's going to have problems when they ever go somewhere in a situation. But like I said before, I think when you mention those glory years, right, that was with him under Frank Reich in 2016 when he won the Super Bowl. And I'm going to reiterate again, that is a big thing for him. I think that's a big thing for him. And like you mentioned, their defense, too. Their defense was good. I mean, they had Darius Leonard, a very good linebacker, and they had a very good team to go around them. And I think that's a big key. If they want to compete with the Titans right now, which is right now the best team in that division, I mean, obviously they got to stop Derrick Henry, right? They got to be able to stop Derrick Henry in that offense and see if Ryan Tannehill can do something for their offense. So big for the Colts. They definitely won this trade, right, Kruk? We can both agree with that. And hopefully the Eagles, they can get major picks and maybe help themselves out in the future to see what they can do in the long run.
Well, before we move topics, that Super Bowl victory was with Nick Foles at quarterback. For those who don't know, Nick Foles is now a Chicago Bear. So, moving forward, we're going to talk about the Padres' newest and most expensive contract to date. Fernando Tatís Jr. signing a 14-year, $340 million contract. Max, that's a lot of money.
That is a lot of money and a lot of years, right? 14 years. I just can't imagine how that's going to – hopefully it works out, right? 14 years is a long time. So, like I said before, it's good that they started him young, right? He's right now at the age of 22, Kruk. And when he gets this deal, he's going to be like in 36, 37. So that's actually good. Some people put their contracts out. They start at 30 years old, and look where they're at. They're 40. They don't have it anymore. They don't have the experience. And I think Tatís Jr. is a growing player in the MLB. He really is. He really has a lot of skill. He's got a lot of talent. And I think he's a big piece for the Padres. And the Padres, they're making a move, right, for the Dodgers. They are definitely making a move. You know, getting Manny Machado, getting Blake Snell, Yu Darvish, that team right now wants to be able. And you got to think about this. The Padres, they are a small market city. They're not the Dodgers. They're not those big cities, and they're getting players like that. I think that's incredible to me. And I hope Tatís, he gets it done in San Diego, man.
And, I mean, and it's interesting to look at contracts. NFL contracts and NBA contracts are getting shorter and shorter, and these MLB contracts out here, 10 years, 13 years, 14 years.
Incredible.
They're getting longer and longer, and it's forcing players to become more loyal because these contracts are too big for other teams to pick up. But just some stats on Fernando Tatís Jr. He's only been in the league for 2 years. He's played a grand total of 163 games, so not even a complete season.
Yeah.
But he is batting over 300. He's got 39 home runs, just shy of 100 RBIs. He's slugging just under 600, and his fielding percentage is 96%.
Wow.
Between him and Manny Machado, they make up the most expensive left side of the infield and one of the best defensive left sides of the infield. He was a 2020 All-MLB team and a 2020 NL Silver Slugger at the shortstop position. Fernando Tatís Jr.'s contract will end the same year that Bobby Bonilla's contract ends with the Mets. Some of you may not remember him because he hasn't played a game since 2001. But his contract goes through the same year that Fernando Tatís Jr.'s contract goes through. And he makes $1.2 million a year. The Mets really got the golden ticket with him.
That's a funny contract there. Also, I like to compare contracts, right, Kruck? We talk about the 14-year. You talk about Bryce Harper's. His was 13 years. That's like you said, the 10, 13, 14 years. That was a 13-year deal. Same as Giancarlo Stanton, a good person for the Yankees now. That's another 13-year contract. I mean, it's crazy to see these amount of players possibly if they can play up to that long. Hopefully they don't experience any injuries, problems with the organizations like we talked about with Wentz and the Eagles. Hopefully nothing like that can happen to obviously Tatís or Bryce Harper or all those players that are going on. So, and obviously now I like to represent the Chiefs area, right? We talk about NFL contracts in this way. When you look at Mahomes' contract right now, it's a 10-year, $503 million contract. That's still a lot of money for them because, again, what did they start? I like to talk about this trend. They're starting young. Right? They're starting young with the contracts, and they're building it up this way. I think they're doing a great job with both Mahomes and Tatís in the organization. So I think, again, like I said before, Tatís Jr., bright kid, has a bright future. He's 2 years. A lot of people don't know him yet. So hopefully he can brighten up in the scene and really help the Padres, beat those Los Angeles Dodgers, man. We'll have to see.
And since you brought up contracts, I have some written down. Harper, once again, 13 years, $330 million. Garrett Cole, 9 years with the Yankees, $324 million.
Wow.
Mike Trout, 12-year extension with the Anaheim Angels. That is for $430 million. And then Miguel Cabrera, everybody's favorite oldie in the MLB, 8 years, $284 million. In other professional sports, as you mentioned, Patrick Mahomes, 10 years, $503 million. And then a boxer, some of you may know and some of you may not, Canelo Alvarez, an 11-year, $365 million contract. A lot of money, a lot of years. A lot of these players are going to end up panning out too.
Yeah, absolutely agree, Kruck.
And that's been the show today. Crunch Time with Kruck. We had fun. We hope you did. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.